joining us this morning. We're glad to have you here. I know it's the last day, and the good thing about having a smaller crowd is we all get to talk with you a little bit more, so we hope you're ready to maybe participate in a little bit of discussion as we go through this. First, maybe we'll just introduce ourselves. So my name's Nicole Torby-Sabo, Vice President of Research at Strada Education Foundation.
I'm Kimberly Sluice. I work on Strada's postsecondary education team and also lead a little bit of our state level work. I spent most of my career in student success roles at colleges and universities, so very happy to be with you.
And Dave Clayton, I'm with Nicole and our colleague Akua, who's here with us. And Laura Love, also from Strada, is with us today. We have a Washington, D.C. office as well as headquarters in Indianapolis, so a local trip for some of us. Delighted to be with you and very appreciative. And we really appreciate your leadership on the front lines of working with students and institutions and systems and creating change. Nicole has really been the primary author and leader and architect of the State Opportunity Index, and we look forward to the chance to share that with you. And maybe we're standing a little too close to something, getting a little feedback. Hopefully that. Well, we're using the microphones and we're standing in the light because there are a few guests with us online, so welcome to you as well. And thank you, and we look forward to learning with you how this actually translates into something that's helpful to you in the work you do. We initiated the work in 2024 with a pilot or inaugural version, significant and meaningful improvements, we believe, but changes in 2025. And then continued, how does this build and become something that supports, just as you've built a community and a movement of collaborators across sectors working towards completion and the benefit of student-centered success, we wish to contribute to that same movement. So thank you for being with us this morning. Nicole?
Yeah, great. And as Dave said, we have, since that initial first report, made a lot of refinements, and that was based on hearing from people all across the country that are doing this work. So that's what we hope to continue to do. So please, we love your feedback. So we've put out this report called the State Opportunity Index, and really what the goal of this report is to build upon the tremendous work that has been done by organizations like Complete College America. So we know that everyone in higher ed, there's been a movement for a long time around expanding access to higher education, which is tremendously important. And then through all the work of CCA and all of you, to really take us from access to completion, knowing that just enrollment is not enough. We need to see students to and through higher education. And so our goal is to continue to build on that great work and really think about, once students complete, are they prepared to take that next step and to have access to economic mobility and career opportunity. So this is kind of this third era, is how can we build on access and completion and connect students to opportunity. And if we're trying to do that, we're kind of at the forefront of figuring out how to measure that, because it's a little trickier than measuring completion rates, graduation rates. How do we measure that kind of opportunity and success? And so we'll start out talking about one way that this has been framed is ROI, but really what the State Opportunity Index is designed to do, everyone has different ways of measuring value, ROI. Our hope is that this framework can help people think about how to get there. So not just, are you doing well, are you not, but what are the tools that you can use as an institution to help more of your students experience that success beyond completion? So this, as I said, it's a framework we hear a lot about, from states all across the country, from institutions all across the country. They're being pressured more and more to demonstrate their value to students and to families. And a lot of times this is framed in terms of return on investment. So the way that we're kind of looking at this to start is not simply how many dollars, how do you maximize the dollars, but more of a making sure that everyone who invests their hopes and dreams in higher education is able to repay their loans and is able to have a benefit from having gone to higher education. So what we're looking at here when we look at ROI by state is what percentage of graduates are able to earn more than a high school graduate, and that earnings premium is enough to be able to pay off their school. So not saying everybody has to, be making six figures, has to be an engineer, but are people making more than they would have without their degree, and are they able to pay off their school? And instead of looking at medians, we're really interested in percentages because we want to make sure that we understand, who's being left behind. So all of these are percentages. So when you see 75 in California, we estimate 75% of graduates in California would have that positive return on investment. New York, you see, is also really high. We want this to be 100 for all states. We hope that every student who invests in college education has that payoff. And we see that there's a lot of variation. And a lot of this, the reason why we look at this geographically and not in this case by institution, is that there are a lot of factors that are outside of the realm of just what higher education institutions can control, right? So a lot of this does have to do with what kind of economic opportunities are available in every state. If you think about a place like North Dakota, or a place like Wyoming, what kind of jobs are available for college graduates? And so the challenge then is to think about how do we bring together this whole ecosystem of education institutions, also policymakers, economic development, the business community, to think about how do we collectively approach this challenge of making sure that higher education pays off. So just one more slide on this is kind of a breakout because we know that there's distinct outcomes for people depending on what kind of pathway they complete. So if you look at associate degrees versus bachelor's degrees, you'll see that the percentages are higher, right, for the bachelor's degree graduates. What's interesting about this, I think a lot of the conversation around ROI is very focused on cost, and that's important. Obviously, that's one of our main areas of strategy because if cost is a barrier to enrollment or completion, then students can't even get their foot in the door. But we all know that community colleges tend to be much more affordable than bachelor's degree granting institutions, and yet the payoff is less consistent for those who stop at the associate degree. Transfer is a different story, certainly. And so what this tells us is that it's not only about making everything as cheap as possible, it's really about what kinds of career opportunities are you preparing your students to be able to take. And so that's kind of what the next, the framework is all about that we're gonna talk through. So the framework that we have, there's 5 areas of strategy here. The first one, clear outcomes, is really talking about what kind of data is there in your state or from your institution to really understand what's happening to your graduates after they complete. And is that transparent? Is that clear? It's very tied to that second pillar, quality coaching. And this is where Complete College America in particular has had such tremendous strength, thinking about making sure that students have a purpose when they begin their education and that they have support in order to make plans and build on that. So taking the information, but then making it really accessible and usable to students. Affordability, we're very familiar with that. Work-based learning, this is really a key. We've seen a lot of solid research showing that students who have experience before they graduate, if it's a paid internship, if it's an apprenticeship, have much stronger outcomes in that first career. And then finally, employer alignment is really about thinking, how do you work with the business community and make sure that the kinds of degrees and skills that you're preparing your students with are gonna prepare them for good jobs in their location. All right.
We thought we'd take just a quick moment to get you talking to each other just a smidge. Nicole's just gone over the framework, right, with the idea here that the goal is to help us think about student success after graduation, which I think we're all sort of moving towards, and then to think about the elements that help us to get there. And so wondering, as you just saw that last slide with those 5 key elements on it, we suspect, given the conversations we've been having with institutional leaders and with state leaders, that you're already seeing elements of this show up pretty significantly in your work. Maybe it's in strategic plans, maybe it's in highlighted initiatives at your institution or at your state level. So we'd invite you to maybe just take a moment, turn to somebody who is near to you in the room, or get up and move around just a little bit. Introduce yourself, tell them who you are, where you're coming to us from, and maybe just share a little reflection on this question, and then we'll take a couple of answers for the full group, but just grounding us in sort of what is already existing in your state, your institution, your system. answers from the crowd. So maybe wrap up in about 30 seconds, please. So I promise we will give you additional time to visit and talk and share. But if I can ask us to come back, and maybe just a couple of folks who'd be willing to share with the whole group the nature of your conversation about where some of these elements are already showing up in your work, your institutional work, your state work. Any volunteer to maybe share what you talked about? I can see almost nothing, but Bob, please, thank you. And Dave will bring in a microphone.
So Ohio is a 100% performance-based funding state. As of July, they added a workforce wage outcomes component to that. There's a fairly complicated formula that actually uses some regression analysis to determine how to split up the portion of state funding that is derived from workforce outcomes. So we're, at our college, we've been tracking wages with using the unemployment data from the Department of Job and Family Services for the past 10 or 11 years. So we've always had a comparison point for us compared to the MIT Living Wage Index. That's been one of our KPIs. But the Ohio information now, where the state funding is actually dependent on it, is causing us to pay a little more attention to this.
That's great. So great example of showing up in state priorities through performance-based funding. Maybe one more example of seeing this already in work? Thank you, please.
Hello, I'm from Tennessee, and we were talking about how in Tennessee we're in the process of trying to revise our funding formula to include more performance-based funding for workforce connections and outcomes. So working to establish a shared definition of what's a credential of impact has been a big priority in Tennessee, with hopes that when we go through the funding formula review process in 2026, that we can have more metrics that are connected to this outcome. So that's been an ongoing conversation.
Wonderful.
So it was good to be paired with Ohio.
Great. So two examples of sort of definitions, performance-based funding, getting clarity on what it is we're driving towards. Perfect. Turn things over to Dave.
Definitions are hard, and we certainly hope that the work we do, but that you do, helps you set what those expectations are and how metrics are calculated, and that you can influence and demonstrate so that it's done with you rather than to you, as in the seasons of change that we have, how powerful and important that is. We see that Nicole talked about the positive ROI that she's calculated, but there are so many different ways to look at that premium, and who's your reference group, and who are you comparing to, and is it in-state, is it out-state, is it certain majors, is it all students, is it those who graduate, is it, so, you know, all of that goes into the mix and becomes very complex as you think, how do we get the incentives that get us going to where we want to be in service of the students? And we've worked hard to try and take that same frame within the State Opportunity Index, but the first category here is this clear outcomes pillar. Thank you, Nicole, which looks at really state data infrastructure. And Bob, you maybe articulated that your institution has been a little bit ahead of some of the statewide efforts in tracking outcomes of your students over time. And you might all think about how in your respective positions can you look to data that keeps you ahead of the curve and helps you model and demonstrate things and inform those discussions. This, working with both state experts and national experts, an advisory group worked together to develop 10 elements of what an ideal education to employment state data system would look like and what would it do. And so it goes through kind of a developmental progression, right? You collect, you integrate data, you provide access to that data, and then you actually invest in using that and giving it to people who can act upon it, both learners as well as in the state context and policymakers and education leaders. So each state fills out a survey, as well as our team looks at publicly available data. Then we play that back to the state agency, typically a SHIO office or whoever has those responsibilities, say, is this right? And give us your notes and whatever. And so when we do that and we categorize each of these 10 elements. You get an average score, and that's what you see in this map, right? And so leading states, you see, this is the one that has, as you're aware, and you're talking about these themes that are coming through, this has more than doubled from 2024. It's really a 2-year progress, just given the timing, but more than double the number of states who are leading here, and another 10 states who've moved into advanced. So tremendous efforts happening nationwide in states that are working to build the data systems that allow them to have visibility all the way K through 12 into post-secondary, into the workforce, and integrate and do that. There's no one way to do that, but there's lots of efforts that are happening, and peers that are working together across states through different coalitions and efforts. Gates is funded with Coleridge, the PSEO coalition, you may be aware, lots of people working on this. If we look at so this just gives you a sense that no one state is doing all of these at a leading point, right? And you see kind of where more states are leading and some are foundational and beginning. But you just get a sense that this, one goal of the State Opportunity Index is to connect peers and point to best practices or lessons learned in other spots and allow people to connect and work together in that regard. All of this is available online, and there are appendices with details for each of the states and technical and methodology and those things. There will be a QR code here at the end, but you can access this information. Quality coaching is one that Nicole will talk about, and we'll talk about how you can also participate in that.
Yeah, so as I was mentioning before, quality coaching is really the extension of, if you have that robust state data infrastructure, how do you make sure that students actually are benefiting from it? And so there really wasn't a way to look at that with administrative data. What we wanted to understand was, what is that student experience? And so, we could even, if you look at counselor ratios, that kind of thing, it wouldn't tell the whole story. And so what we did to better understand this was to deploy a nationally representative student survey. So we had 56,000 students participate. We had institutions who were part of this that chose to participate and get their results for their students. And so we ask about 3 different elements of what we call quality coaching. The first is kind of a general, did you have personalized coaching or guidance to prepare you for a successful career? And then the second element is about the kinds of labor market information that students had access to. So these are both, I think, pretty aligned with the, the framework around giving students purpose when they're enrolling. And so we asked if they had information about career paths that fit their strengths and interests, what kind of jobs would be available, what those jobs would pay, and then a good understanding of the outcomes from graduates of their institution. So they kind of have that vision of where this is all going to lead. And then finally, well, one more thing I'll say about that, we're also interested in the timing. So you'll see we asked when, not only did you get this, but when. And so for our metric, what we're counting is if students received this either before they enrolled or within their first year. Because we know that if they're not getting it until they're about to graduate, that's really not sufficient. Everyone said, yes, we understand. And then the last is support. So again, not just information, but did they have that kind of support to make plans and then to overcome challenges and barriers as they arose? And what I'll share after we kind of go through the state results is that it came out pretty differently across these 3 elements. Some you'll see were much stronger, and then some with a lot more room to grow. So when we look at this for the 4-year institutions, this is where we see a lot more states in the kind of foundational and developing stages. So we see really strong data infrastructure, but for the most part, students not really saying that they're experiencing all these kinds of elements of coaching. Developing in this case, it means fewer than half of the students that we surveyed. On average, we're saying that they got all those different kinds of elements of support. When we look, so this is public 4-year institutions. When we look at the public 2-year institutions, we see a little bit stronger results. So we see more states are in that advanced category for their 2-year institutions. We'd love to, hear from you all. I think some of what we've been hearing is that a lot of times at the 2-year institutions, this kind of support and guidance tends to maybe be built into the curriculum a little bit more, into classes, instead of maybe at the Career Center where students don't all visit or don't visit until, very late in their program. And, our institutions implementing guided pathways work, it's already been a little bit more embedded into the experience of every student. So this is a great opportunity, I think, to learn from where we are seeing some strength there in those two-year institutions. The last thing, just when we break these apart, so these are the 3 different elements: support, guidance, and labor market information. You see tremendous strength in that support element. And I think that's just a testament to all the good work that's been done over these past years to make sure that students have those wraparound supports. And we've, been very focused on the, helping students who are enrolled to go ahead and complete their programs. And so that, community of support is really strong. Students are reporting that. What they're not getting is the kind of information about career opportunities, job opportunities, earnings, opportunities, or career outcomes of students who came before them. So I think that's what we see as an opportunity. If you see strong data infrastructure and strong support for students, we just need to connect that and make sure that the people who are advising students are maybe better equipped with that kinds of career and labor market information to be able to give them that insight while they're making their decisions. So we have some more opportunity for discussion here.
Yeah, before we hop into this question, I do want to just pause. I would imagine, given the audience and who you are, what you do, that you have some reflections on what Nicole just shared. Before we jump into this question about models, I wonder if anything you just saw surprised you, if you have any reactions or questions to what was just shared. Please.
Looking at the map for the bachelor's degree institutions and seeing that there was limited data in a whole quadrant of the region, that was alarming. And then to see that across the country, it's all developing. When you look at the technical and community colleges, it seems that they're further advanced in this field. So it's an opportunity.
Tons of upside opportunity. I know there are a number of folks in the room representing community and technical colleges, and this is a place where I think there's much to sort of look to and learn. Any reflections for folks who are sitting in seats in community colleges, technical colleges, about sort of what you've learned about doing this most successfully that maybe would be good to surface?
Specifically, CCA is developing guided pathways, right? So we're doing that, but we're also implementing, right now we are on our 6th CCA cohort that includes everything from financial, management to strategic scheduling. And so doing the pathways, but also adding the strategic scheduling and also adding the advising reform and also developing a co-rec model rather than transitional studies has all worked together in order to try to develop that clear path. And then we are now looking at, I think I mentioned to you, we are in Aspen School now with the Unlocking Opportunity. So now we're also looking at post-completion. My new motto is student success as an end at graduation kind of thing, right? And so even taking it a step further to see this, because we were also on a performance-based plan just at graduation placement, but they're trying to look at other areas. So I think all of those things working in conjunction, which I think our school has done pretty well, really helps to create this pathway.
Appreciate the comprehensive sort of list of things that have been done there and that folks are working on. Nicole mentioned it when she shared the data across those 3 elements. The fact that that support element is so high is no accident, right? It is coordinated efforts from folks doing exactly what you just described that has meant that students are getting, right, a higher quality experience, more likely to succeed once they're enrolled. And then moving that, I love the success doesn't end at graduation, moving that goalpost just a little further to say what's necessary to ensure, right, that next transition is a successful one for students. Moving to this question about models, you've given us a little bit of a taste of that. Other models that folks are seeing with regard to, making sure every student has the opportunity to develop that education to career pathway that you would share. And Lisa, I see you, and I may call on you if, may I?
Julian
Okay.
had a comment.
Sorry, Julian, I can see very little back there, so my apologies.
Oh, no problem, and I was already on the discussion question. That was where my head was, so really excited to be able to be in the conversation. And for those who don't know me, I'm Julian Thompson with the United Negro College Fund. I've been reflecting a lot on the role of social capital development in producing the kind of capabilities that a student needs to proceed to an effective career pathway. The organization Common Group hosted a meeting about 3 weeks ago to sort of understand how social capital can be developed across post-secondary education, with the knowledge, at least that group posited, that 80% of people get their jobs through their networks. And so figuring out a way to kind of develop dynamic social networks, but also to figure out how to give students the confidence to know that they can lean into those networks successfully. So when I think about HBCU education, of course, HBCUs provide a lot of small, welcoming spaces for belonging and acceptance. And then on top of that, they basically infuse you with a spirit of confidence in your own self, in your beliefs, in your ability to be successful in the world. And that's what really accelerates your ability to take your skills and get them into the marketplace. So I've been reflecting a lot on how to either distill what those capabilities are so that we can accentuate them and replicate them, or if there are newer ways where technology can support that social capital building.
Julian, thank you. I mean, so much rich advice in that, right, or reflection in that. And I think when we move into the work-based learning data and conversation, I think there's actually resonance as well. So in thinking about both what are the experiences students have where they're able to engage and build that social network naturally through experiences in the workplace, and then how does coaching complement that as we help students make sense of the skills they're getting, build their confidence, understand how to leverage those social networks. So thank you very much for those good nuggets.
So my name is Lisa Hunter. I'm with the American Association of State Colleges and Universities. We have a number of institutions working on developing high-quality coaching and education and career pathways. So on behalf of those institutions, what we're seeing is embedding career outcomes throughout the curriculum has been a big initiative. We have some institutions that are also kind of paralleling that strategy with micro-credentials. We have folks investing in infrastructure via technology as well, and looking at even AI chatbot models that are going to give students kind of in-time feedback perhaps on several elements of whatever it is that they're working on. We see some strategies with folks even within both of those strategies looking at very nuanced, like where to place the information or the technologies in terms of access to the information. And we see another large investment in coaching, career coaches. Prairie View A&M has a number of, so that the caseload model for career coaches is quite small, so that students are getting personalized attention from onboarding all the way through completion.
Lisa, thank you for sharing just sort of a whole sort of spectrum of models that are out there where folks are really chiming. I think the key here is how do you get it to every student, right? So I hear some innovations around that, thinking about embedding into the curriculum, perhaps building this into the, sort of work of a cadre of folks who see students at several touch points throughout their careers. So thank you for those examples. We will move, I think, on to work-based learning, where I think you'll see some synergies. Oh, sorry, affordability first, forgive me.
I have to wait till you get to Nicole again, but you can do it. When we think about affordability, and again, thank you so much for the work you do with like purpose, structure, momentum, right? And then the support that goes around to make that happen. If we really do well and we help people identify their both aspirations and dreams, they bring those, but how do they translate those into the transformed life that they would like? And what's that clear path through there? We don't want to do all that work and then have them say, you don't have enough for a down payment, you can't ever buy a house, right? And so how do we ensure, and that's the lens we've taken on affordability, lots of ways to look at it, but what is that are we expecting of each individual if they wanted to work their way through college? How feasible is that at the public institutions in each state? And we can do that in a couple ways, like challenging data, but we have 3 dimensions in this kind of categorization. One is taking the average net price that each institution reports. And in the census, you can find for each state what the median part-time college student wage is, right? And so if you assume people worked full-time in the summer, part-time at least while they're enrolled, what is their ability to pay that net price at the public institutions in their state? And you weight it by the average of enrollment across the institutions. We also, because that net price is reported for households 30,000 and under, you can look at what that looks like for states' average net price and ability to work your way through. And then, in the spirit of time is money, time to completion. And we don't have that for the two-year institutions, such a diverse student body, and what is graduation, what does time mean? But we started, this is one of the new elements Nicole inserted this year, looking at for the 4 years, what percentage of graduates complete that degree within 4 years of enrollment. So when you put those together, this is what that map looks like. Florida being the one leading state, a few advanced states, California, New York, Indiana, Wyoming, Washington, New Mexico. It's a geography quiz. Can you name them all?
Maryland.
I'm getting better. I almost tripped on Alabama and Mississippi a couple weeks ago when I was in Alabama. That wasn't good. But my Gulf State geography is improving. Thank you. Let's look at kind of what that looks like then underneath, Nicole. You just look at what this means in the state level, the hours of work needed, again, for the average. There are 4 states where that's advanced. That means you could work 10 hours, full-time in the summer, and 10 hours a week while you're enrolled and pay your way through, right? If you get into the yellow, that's 20 hours a week. If you get into the green is 10 hours, blue is 20 hours, yellow is 30 hours, and on and above. So you look at that burden that's there. Then the on-time completion, one state where, right, close to 2/3 of the students are actually completing the 4-year degrees within 4 years, that national average. Look at the next slide. The affordability, as Nicole highlighted when we were looking at positive ROI, much more feasible to work your way through that, which just at the price points and the wages and the opportunities. The challenge then becomes what programs are you in and how does that fit with your purpose and that aspiration to the economic outcome and social mobility that you're seeking. We might.
Sorry. What's up? Skipping it? Okay.
I think about time management
Yeah.
a little bit.
Okay,
Pick it
we
up.
can move on. Okay, so then the fourth strategy that we're highlighting is work-based learning. So, as I mentioned, research shows that, and no surprise to you all, one of the strongest predictors and strongest keys for getting students a good, strong first job is the kind of experience that they're bringing along with their education. So we look at 5 different kinds of work-based learning: internships, apprenticeships, co-ops, practicums, and undergraduate research experience. Practica includes student teaching and nursing clinicals. So we wanted to make sure that this covered kind of the spectrum of different fields of study. You'll notice that every single thing says paid here, because we know that a lot of students are doing these experiences and not getting paid, and really if we're aiming to make this accessible for all students, this needs to be a paid experience, especially from what we just saw with the affordability slides, that in most cases, students do need to work in order to pay their way through school or take on loans. And so, also it impacts time to completion, the number of hours that you have to work versus classes you can take. So these are all really interconnected. So it's important that these be paid experiences. So here's what we see when we look at the 4-year institutions. You can see the key underneath showing the percentage of students who had at least one of these quality paid work-based learning experiences by the time they graduate. We are so interested in Iowa and Pennsylvania. We've been talking with them. My colleague Laura Love is here. She's our Senior Vice President of Work-Based Learning, really an expert in this. And so we're really interested in understanding what are these states doing that gives an environment in which more students are able to take advantage of these kinds of experiences. Some of it, is supportive legislation. Some of it might be subsidizing these kinds of positions so that, the state pays part and then employers pay part of the wages. We see stipends for student teaching. Some of the states across the country, we've seen more apprenticeships built into nursing pathways, for instance, so that way you can actually pay your nurses while they're going through their clinicals. And sorry, I should mention the states that are striped there, that's because they're right on the border of developing advanced. So we see these 2 advanced states and then a number of states that are right kind of on that threshold of almost having a majority of their students participate in one of these. We think it's really important for all students. Every student should graduate having had some kind of relevant work experience before they complete their degree. What we see at the 2-year level, honestly, we're still working on, the best way to measure this. We see participation a lot lower for students at 2-year institutions. We understand that a lot of these students, maybe they do intend to transfer and will get that kind of experience later on. And that also there's just a lot of challenges, again, with needing to balance work. And so how do you make an experience that's accessible so you're not asking someone to quit their job, which is a source of steady income and security for them, in order to have some other kind of experience. So we're seeing some interesting models about kind of trying to take the work experiences that students are already in and mentor them and help them see the skills that they're developing and how those can be valuable, how they can talk about the experiences and skills that they're gaining in the work that they're doing already.
And Nicole, maybe just a side comment to Julian's point on social capital. Some of the
Oh,
work
yes.
you
Yeah,
did
very good.
earlier this summer in research showing what students valued.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder. So we know, again, not every work-based learning experience is built the same. There's a range of quality. It's hard to understand, just from saying someone had an internship, is it quality? And so we did some research with students reflecting on, it was, again, a nationally representative survey of students reflecting on the kinds of work-based learning experiences they had and how valuable they felt they were for their careers. And so we found, it could be across the spectrum of models that we mentioned, students getting value out of this, but the things that really stood out were 2 things. One, what kind of technical skills did they gain from their experience? But 2 was the social capital. Did they meet people that they felt would be able to help them in their future career? That was incredibly strong in terms of students' perceptions of how valuable it was. And so that's where we see that, there may be opportunity in experiences that students are having on campus, such as campus employment, that kind of thing, or project-based learning that exists in the classroom, but how do you actually add the social capital element of it? Because even if they gain all the skills, if they're not meeting anyone beyond the campus, then it's really not fully taking advantage of what that experience could be for a student. So how do you think about adding in those really critical social capital elements?
And Julian, your point of how do you help people have the confidence to recognize, oh, this network is here and I can step into this imposter syndrome, or it's right, like how do you mobilize and activate that? A question here in the back, comment, question, a voice.
Sure, hi, so there's Zoe Corwin from the University of Southern California, Puglia Center for Higher Ed. So I appreciate the value in cultivating social capital. I'm also wondering if you have any insights into how you prepare the people who are hosting students in the workplace learning to make sure that they are being sensitive to diverse experiences and that they are really being thoughtful about how they help develop social capital.
So good, thank you. Kimberly, you might want to speak to some of the work on campus employment. There are institutions that are working hard to train supervisors and mentors both on and off campus. What's expected?
I'm happy to start, and I do want to acknowledge that probably the real expert in the room is standing right behind you. So maybe just I'll say a word about the campus-based work, and then Laura, if you would like to add, improve that, I would be grateful for that. But we are seeing models where, especially in a world where the demand side for internships, paid internships in particular, is increasing, and the supply side has lagged in time with that. We are seeing institutions really deeply try to reimagine what the student employment experience on campus looks like, where students are being paid to work on campus. In many cases, those jobs haven't been fully maximized for the way that they can build skills, build confidence, and to your great, point, really working with supervisors to ensure that that's a rich learning experience, one with reflection, with real job responsibilities, with an opportunity to both gain and articulate the skills that a student is receiving. So in the best of those models, there's a whole bunch of work done with supervisors to really help them understand the power that they have to influence this positive experience for students. Maybe not to replace an internship ideally, right, but to build the confidence, the skills to be able to move closer to earning one of those highly coveted externally facing opportunities. But Laura, I would love it if you'd add here.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Again, Laura Love, and Senior Vice President of Work-Based Learning at Strada, and it's such a great question. And really, I would just build on what Kimberly said and say that it really is about that employer partnership, right? And thinking about that in a really strategic way and thinking about how well the student is prepared, but equally how well the employer is prepared and how you as an institution can add value to the company that is going to host the intern through things like supervisor training. So we see some institutions really thinking about preparing managers through, like, again, training, ongoing coaching, and helping them understand what level of skill the student is coming in with and how they can build, mentorship and cohort models and things that are going to add value and return on investment for the employer. So those same things that institutions are experimenting with within their four walls, I think it's sort of extending that to your employer partnerships and helping them understand, again, what to expect and how to meet the student where they are, in a sense.
Your perspectives will be.
Can you say that one more time?
Have you done a deep dive into what that training looks like for supervisors or workplace people who are bringing in low-income students, as opposed to just like, higher income kids who might
Yeah.
parents could giving them coaching as well. So if it's your first generation professional, wondering what the training looks like for supervisors who are welcoming in more diverse students.
Yeah, so I would draw on, so my background is in the nonprofit sector at an organization called Year Up, which was all about students who had no college experience and were entering the workforce really for the first time. And again, I think it's, at that organization, we would build the training really to help supervisors understand where these students were coming from and ground them in the perspectives of the barriers that they face every single day, just simply even getting to the internship. Transportation, childcare, all of those things that they may not have thought about, right, as a barrier. And I think starting with that kind of empathy and eye-opening training really helps, 2 weeks, 3 weeks in, when the student is facing a challenge and wants very much to get to the workplace but can't for whatever reason. And it's not a matter of motivation, it's a matter of life getting in the way. So happy to share some examples, if helpful, of like the training the kind of curriculum or training that we've seen specifically for those students.
I think we're just gonna go ahead and move on to the
Look at employer alignment. You all are doing, hopefully what you're seeing is that each of you can find pieces of this framework that help connect it to a whole, but also areas to go where you can be making progress and working with your colleagues. So thank you for the discussion. And if we look at one final dimension, it's this connection between, as Nicole alluded to, so much of the value proposition, that positive ROI of a college degree, is dependent upon the labor force and the labor market and the economic conditions, not just in states as a whole, but in regions, right? If people attend close to where they live and they're going to work where they're close to where, so those dimensions we look at. We tried to connect, again, something that gives an apples to apples ability to look across each state and hoping that each state then would develop their data system, that Clear Outcomes Education Employment Data System, so that they could look more specifically with more regional targeting and focus, more industry-specific focus for the jobs and the economic development the workforce needs in specific areas, and align those partnerships with institutions. So this is a broad cut at something that's representative to illustrate the power of it. We look at each state, you can understand the percentage of college graduates, recent college graduates, who are working in a job that is categorized as a college-level job, right? It's kind of natural to think if I got a college degree, I should get a college job if I want one. The other side of that looks at what are the forecasted hiring needs in 9 key opportunity jobs that we identified. These jobs you can see in the small print, those of you who are brave enough to sit all the way at the front, but the rest of you can find it online. Those jobs represent a third of early career hiring nationwide, at least a quarter in each state. So these are jobs that, what number of jobs are needed, are available, or employers trying to fill for somebody with 3 years experience or less. And you can then look at the pipelines. How does that flow from the different programs that are offered in each state? What number of people are graduating with those credentials in preparation to enter those jobs? So you take those two percentages and put them together, and again, you see this employer alignment. Rhode Island, Utah, and California advanced, and then a number of states developing, and a number of states foundational. No one leading in that. And this is part of there are more college graduates than there are good jobs, and yet you have employers who say we need to fill entry-level positions that meet our needs. If we look here, and my father has good red-green color blindness. I didn't get that gene, but he looked at our maps and he said, I can't see it. It all looks the same. So maybe that's an area for improvement. You see the variation in college-level employment, right? 72% Washington, D.C. is always an outlier that way, but you see the low 60s in a number of states, all the way down to kind of low 50s, that variation in what is the labor market doing and the opportunities for college graduates. And then if we look at the supply-demand ratios, again, you see that variation, a high 67%, 2/3, California 61, Mississippi 62, and then down into the 40s in other states of that supply-demand pipeline. Now, some states attract and hire people from other places, but this is looking at your kind of homegrown, how much could you fill? Some people lose, right? West Virginia may have a strong kind of talent pipeline in one area, but all those people may be moving to the Washington, D.C. metro area in their engineering, et cetera. And you can look underneath at each state, and I think, Nicole, maybe we don't have the breakout here, but you can look at that kind of supply demand and where you are on each of those 9 opportunity jobs as well. So thank you.
I would say that concludes sort of all of the data, part of the presentation. So want to just open things up for questions, reflections. If this sparks something for you, we'd be glad to hear. But if you have another question that hasn't been answered or a reflection, we'd be glad to hear that as well.
And I have a broader question for you as you've been leading this work on completion, right? And like the 2009 to today and Complete College America, this community that's working together. If you think about now inserting this, as Chuck talked about us, that student success doesn't end at graduation, right? It continues beyond, and Bob, you talked about things at your institution. How does this help? We want it to be complementary, additive, to be meeting you where you are. What are the things that help you build within the momentum you already have, and not be another shiny object that distracts everybody, say, wait a minute, here we go over here. But how do these things work together that this movement and this community can continue to go forward? Be very helpful for us to understand your perspectives as well. They're not taking pictures of me, Nicole. They're looking at the QR codes.
I may be wrong on this, but I thought that some accrediting agencies in medical programs basically prohibit students earning money when they're doing internships and co-ops. And I wonder if there's a way to talk to them about that, if my recollection is correct.
You're right, Bob. There are liability and there are accreditation issues when
Yes.
you're providing services. Laura?
It depends on the state. And what we haven't done a thorough analysis state by state, but what we have heard from a lot of people in the field is it's usually more perception than it is like a law or an actual rule. And so this is where we see some really exciting innovation, and in some states being led by employers and hospitals themselves who actually need workers and have shortages. So Wisconsin is a great example. University of Wisconsin Health System has nursing as well as many other shortages and have built apprenticeship pathways that stack into degrees, but allow students to do their clinicals as a paid work placement. And it did require the hospital system to go to the nursing board in the state and talk to the Healthcare Association and others, but they found that it was more the way it had always been done as opposed to a rule. And that can look different. In some states it may be more written down, but this is I would say, emerging nascent area that Strada is excited to research more and think about what are the creative ways that we can advocate for pay.
Alabama and Utah have created nurse apprenticeships program at a state level. North Carolina, New Jersey, and
That's right.
a couple others are working on that apprenticeship. Wisconsin's worked through a system. So people are trying to, Pennsylvania we spoke with earlier this week on teaching and stipends for student teachers. And so people are recognizing
Growing.
this kind of high demand, high social value. Are there ways to increase the pipelines and remove some of those barriers?
Absolutely, yep. It's a great question.
I'm going to ask a question from Nicole before she looks surprised.
Okay.
She can stand in the light so that the people online can also participate as we wrap up. Nicole, you've dedicated the last 2.5 years of your professional career. This has been the biggest thing you've been working on.
Mm-hmm.
Why? What is your hope that this contribution to the people like us gathered here today and others in the field, how come?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not just to write a report. And so our hope is that this is something that provides, a useful framework that helps build momentum behind, more students getting that career opportunity. Because I think, we all value higher education so much and know how life-changing it can be, and, want to see that preserved and want to see that, happen for more students. And so, yeah, our hope is that it can be something that, sustains the momentum that, has already started and helps really connect people as well. I think is, something that we're trying to do in the next stage is sometimes research, it's a conversation starter, and then it can bring people together to, just like this, and, a little way to be able to talk about what they're doing in their own states and then learn from one another.
And my observation in this work is that you, leaders and individuals at institutions and in states everywhere across the nation, want to serve students, want their lives to be transformed and better, and nobody feels like they can do it fast enough or well enough all by themselves. So as much as the press or others may kind of say higher ed, higher ed, higher ed, so much of this is dependent upon the ecosystem and on the labor market and on the fair returns to preparation and the development of talent that individuals make. So one of our significant efforts is to pull employers and policymakers into partnership to support this. And this notion of outcomes, workforce, economic opportunity, we'll talk about that because that engages them, but that's a means to helping students realize those dreams and advance in that preparation. So in every way, we are sympathetic and appreciative of you at the center of knowing how to do this. We've seen industry say, oh, we can provide these credentials, we can do that, we can enroll 1 million people, we can do that, and they can't complete them, and they start saying, community college, four-year institution system. Can you provide our credentials because you know how to teach, you know how to support students, you know how to move things through, you help people complete and make progress. So just our tremendous appreciation to you, and know that we're working hard to create the policy and the employer partnership context that allows you to do what you really know how to do and have committed your careers and your lives to. And we hope your institutions and your leaders and your faculties feel both celebrated and appreciated, but also know that their innovation and resilience is going to be what helps us move, just as we move through access into completion and we pursue in the service of students their outcome. So thank you for being here this morning with us, but being with us collectively on this journey we're all on. Thank you very much.